All right. So I wrote this song last week for my wife, but I dedicate it to all of you. See how this goes. Told you too much, got to dim down. Been with folks who didn't want you around. Well, that's their loss, they had no clue. You're a diamond in a damn tree. It's just a matter of time before others see you. It's just a matter of time before others see you the way I do. It's just a matter of time before others see you. Your light shining through. It's just a matter of time before others see the amazing, wonderful, awesome you. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. All you've been through, you're quite a survivor. Even more, you've got a heart of gold. It's not easy doing life alone, but that's all changed, those days are gone. It's just a matter of time before others see you. It's just a matter of time before others see you the way I do. It's just a matter of time before others see you. Your light shining through. It's just a matter of time before others see the amazing, wonderful, awesome you. The amazing, wonderful, awesome you. The amazing, wonderful, awesome you. Thank you. That was fun. Ooh, I wrote a new song. Ooh, I have an audience to play it for. So take a minute to say hi to the folks around you. Welcome, welcome.
Nice to see you. A couple weeks. Yeah.
All right, come on back, come on back. Come on back. Come on back. So, this week, I've been thinking a lot about trust. Not just trusting others or trusting this or trusting that, but the deep, abiding trust that of course life works out. Even if I can't see it, even if I can't know it. That kind of trust. And so When I was 21, I got involved with an organization called Actualizations. It was one of those self-help weekend workshop kind of things. You got in there on a Friday till Sunday. And the way it worked is they put about 250 people in a room. And the workshop, and you were given a number when you came in. And the workshop leader would pull these numbers at random, and if your number was pulled, you got up on stage in front of everybody, told your story, and you were processed. Right in front of everybody. And usually by somewhere mid-Saturday, critical mass was reached and the room shifted. And we all got to have that experience. Well, I loved it, and so I signed up to volunteer and started helping out and doing this and doing that, met the founder. And so I did that for a few months, and then they had the workshop again, and I went in to do it a second time, and because this time the founder was leading it, and hi. And so my number got called, and I got up on stage, and before I started talking, the founder said, Cliff, we're not going to do this the way we normally do it. Just shut up, I got something to tell you. Trust the process. That's it. Go sit down. Trust the process. I've been thinking about that since I'm 21. I'm in my 60s. And it's been like going through all these years. And here's the thing about it, is I have been in the past, a very anxious person. Very anxious, very fearful, very concerned, very worried. I was that guy. And so trusting the process, I sat down going, trust the process? It sounds crazy. But, obviously it stuck with me all these years. Last year, as most of you know, I was in a hospital bed where the doctor said you're not seeing tomorrow. And I got it. Trusting the process. I didn't get anxious. Your doctor's sitting there saying, this is it for you. You're dead. And I didn't get anxious. I didn't get fearful. I didn't worry. I thought, this is the coolest feeling ever. A lot of time we talk about these principles here, and the thing about them that makes the most sense to me is the freedom I feel from them. The way I feel in those moments where I used to be terrified, I used to be so anxious, I used to be freaking out, and now I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust the process. So because of that, I had an extraordinary thing happen this week. Before last Sunday, some of you know that where I used to live in Asheville, North Carolina, they got creamed by a hurricane. We're underwater, lost electricity, lost power, lost cell phone. And that's where my son lives. And so the hurricane happened, and last Sunday came along, and I hadn't heard from him. I hadn't been able to get through. Well, I hadn't heard from him on this level. Let me put it that way. And what I noticed about it is I wasn't worried. I wasn't fearful. I was deep in trust. I wasn't even concerned. You know how people like to say, oh, I'm not worried, I'm just concerned. Like it's something different. I wasn't any of those things, and I was like, wow, this feels so darn good to be here in this place of such abiding trust that in the midst of me not knowing what's going on with my son on the physical level, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second, I was okay. My sister called me. She was freaking out. She says, I bet you're freaking out about this. And I was like, no. And she was like, really? I was like, no, I'm really not. I gotta trust, either I trust in life or I don't. And this feels way better. It just feels so much better in here. My whole body felt so much healthier with this. Now, I do want to say that I had a leg up. When I was, again in my 20s, I read a book about astral projection. And I decided that I wanted to do that. So I started practicing and practicing and practicing astral projection. The first time I succeeded was 22 years later. It took me 22 years to finally leave my body and go and visit somebody. And the first time it happened, it was with my dad. I went and visited my dad in the early hours of the morning. He was in the backyard. He was fixing a chair. Yeah! He was in the backyard. He was fixing a chair. It's okay. They can hang out. I'm really good with it. And I saw him what he was wearing, and so I woke up all excited and called him and said, Dad, were you just in the backyard fixing a chair and wearing this, and this? He goes, yeah, how'd you know that? I said, I was just there. He said, don't do that again. He was not as excited about it as I was. But I did. I kept at it, kept practicing. And every once in a while, when I couldn't find my son, I'd go flying around and find him. And one day I caught him smoking. So I called him up. I said, hey, you're smoking with your friends. And he said, Dad, you can't be doing this. You can't be watching me like this. That's not okay. So I said, all right. I won't do that anymore, but we have to have some sort of connection here. And so we created what I call a soul connection, where we actually communicate that way. And we've been doing that since he's 14 years old, 12, 14, or somewhere in there. And so I had a leg up in the fact that I was talking with him on that plane, and he was telling me that he was okay. They were kind of low in water. So they were having a boil. I didn't know about the blowing part. I just heard that they low in water and they didn't have a generator. And then on Monday, when I finally talked to Isaac, he said they were low on water. They had a generator, but it didn't work. So I felt like, okay, that was kind of confirming, right? There's ways of being in this world with yourself and others that are beyond the physical. That are beyond your ability to know, that can give you a level of trust. So what you're looking at in the physical world, what you think is going on here, you don't have to buy into so much. And you can be as free as this guy. Because that's what it's about, right? I was talking to somebody the other day about who was saying that what they wanted was to, be more like a child. And I think it's really more that it's taking that childlike nature into our adulthood, because the naivety is gone, but the nature can still be there. The trust can still be there. How we are in life can still be there. So when I heard from Isaac Monday night, I wasn't surprised with what he said to me. And we made plans to get him here, and here he is. Woo! Safe and sound. Yeah. Now, to give you a full picture, I want you to know that my trust in the process means I don't get to decide how things work out best. And what I mean by that is, in my lack of worry, in my place of being calm, I was also practicing how to tell you today that my son was dead just in case. Because it's a possibility. I don't get to decide this stuff. I just have to trust. And so it isn't like I know everything's going to work out exactly the way I like it to. It's simply that I trust in highest and best and know that somehow there's a blessing here. That's the hardest thing, right? Is to find blessings when it doesn't, when it just hurts. I was talking to somebody the other day about grief and how I believe that grief and love are entangled. That they're in there together. That grief isn't just another way of expressing love. And if we're going to be intimate in this world, we've got to be open-hearted to all of it. Not just the parts that feel good.
Yeah.
Right? Life has a totality to it. And in that trust, in that ability to be with that, it really freed me. I felt so freed by it. I felt so alive in it. It wasn't, a lot of times they talk in Buddhism about being detached. I did not feel detached. I felt alive in it. I have been lucky enough to have some extraordinary lessons when I was younger that still took me, as a slow learner, took me, most of my life to really take in. Another one of those lessons happened when I was, again, in my 20s. I was dating a woman whose best friend was an older woman who was inventing the very first biofeedback machine. And her and I got to be test subjects in developing this machine. Well, one day, we'd heard about a friend of ours that got cancer. And I said to this older woman, I said, I'm worried about her. And she said to me, she can't use that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times, we express worry as care, right? What we're really trying to show is care, but we use the word worry. Or maybe we really are worried. But whoever you're worrying about can't use that energy. There is a greater energy of calm and effectiveness. One of the things I thought of this week in the difference between how I used to be this worry ward and who I am now is it's as if there was this darkened fog between me and the circumstance. That the worry actually got between me being my most effective. It stopped me from being the powerful, creative, spiritual being I am. It's as if, this week, I felt it. It was as if a light switch went on, and all of a sudden I could see. In a way that when I was worried, I couldn't. When I was concerned, I couldn't. And so the steps I took to get in here were quick and easy, and boom, 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 because I was so clear. The light was so bright. But that is impossible when you're in worry, when you're in doubt, when you think that, oh my God, being anxious. And so I'm telling you this from a place of being somebody who was very anxious. I heard that saying when I was in my early 20s, and I have still worried lots in my life. A lot of times about him. So it isn't like I learned that lesson right there, right? The reason I told you it took me 22 years to astral project was to let you know things take time. This teaching takes time. I realized last week I mentioned to you guys that I was probably at 60 to 65% awake. I think I've made it to 70% at this point. That's still 30% away from doing it all the time. And yet, that simple amount makes such a dramatic difference in the quality of our lives, in our health, in our well-being, and in our effectiveness. It's really key to what I want to let you know today is about the effectiveness and freedom of it. The more freedom we experience, the less suffering we experience. The less suffering we experience, the more effective we are in life. The more dramatic the change we can make. And that change that we make happens naturally. It's not something we gotta like, what am I doing? What am I doing? How am I gonna do this? What do I gotta do? That's worry. And that's when the light switch isn't on. Right? But there's this other way that I keep discovering more and more. That's just extraordinary in terms of being here and allowing and being with, being intimate with. There's an aliveness to it. Can you hear the passion in my voice? There's an aliveness to this. This is not detachment. I want to be clear on the difference. This is why I love Zen so much, because they're constantly talking about intimacy. I'm sure I've mentioned before that intimacy in Zen, the words for intimacy and enlightenment are the same word. So the practice, right? Because that's what it comes down to. That's why the classes here are so important.
Yeah.
People have said to me about, how many here are in the class right now? Yeah, right? It's not, and many of you have taken the class before. You're not in there because of the content, or maybe you'll see that a little differently, but it gets the practice going.
Yeah.
And then you have others around you for that accountability to help you practice. So you're not alone in it. Because this is a really hard teaching to perceive the world differently if you're on your own, doing it by yourself. It's just too easy to fall back into the drama of it all. It's just too easy to start seeing these, I'm talking to you about life and death situations, but there's the day that isn't life and death, and you can still get caught in the drama of it. I'm doing better with my dogs barking. I'm not yelling at him so much. Like, he starts barking, and then I start barking. Like, that's going to help, right? But I'm a slow learner, so it's taking me time. Okay. If he's barking and I start barking, that doesn't help. I got to do this differently. Right? So it's not always about life and death. It's about the little things and how we bring aliveness to it. Yeah. Bring our higher selves to it. Bring that person in us that has that switch up so that we can see. Because it always comes down to seeing. Perception is everything. How are you looking at what it is that's going on? Because it's how you're looking at it that's creating the anxiety. It's not about, I want to be less anxious. It's about, I'm looking at this in a particular way that's creating my anxiety. How do I need to shift my perception? Because there's another way to see it. I am finding a perception in the world that is freeing me and yet enlivening me. I am not detached. It was not easy putting together a talk that included him being dead. But I face these things head on because I can, and because that's where the work is. I've talked to you before about the idea that there's two ways to face any situation: closed-hearted and open-hearted. The same experience. You get to shift to a place of seeing the glory of life itself in it, even if it's life and death, and especially when it's not. Or maybe especially when it is. I don't know. But either way, the idea being, you want to be this is what I don't know what you want. This is what I want. I want for you and for me to feel the fullness that life has for us. To feel its richness, its fullness. In every awesome experience, in every disaster, in everything that looks awful, in everything that looks fantastic. There is a way to be with it all that will allow us to be effective, to rise, and to have a joy-filled life. That's what we teach here. We teach spiritual principles, practices, so that you can have a joy-filled life.
Yes.
To awaken. I love being in that awakened state, not just because it's a good idea, but because it feels so darn good. It allows me to be with life and empathetic and kind. It allows me to feel it in ways that I didn't even know I would ever get to. With the light on. What I want for each and every one of you is to experience as often as you can what it's like to be in this life with the light on. Mm-hmm. It's extraordinary. And I love each and every one of you. And thank you for coming and listening.
Thank you, Cliff. Another inspirational talk. Trust the process is what I'm taking away.